Welcome back, everyone. It's just another day in the life as a military wife. And this week, I had the privilege of interviewing Bryn Omer. She's a chaplain's wife for the U.S. Army. And I've had the privilege of working with her and getting to know her previously. She explains a little bit about what it's like to be a chaplain's family and the process of becoming a chaplain. So I hope you enjoy that. As always, you are listening to Life of a Military Wife, and I am your host, Sam Wolf.
Okay, everyone. So as I mentioned before, I have Bryn Omer with me, and she is a chaplain's wife, in the United States Army. And I happen to know her because she's a friend of mine, and that's part of the reason why I think I was able to get this all set up so last minute. So thank you, Bryn, for doing that. Starting off, how long have you guys been a chaplain's family? How long has your husband been a chaplain?
About 13 years, almost 14 years, but he has 17 active duty.
Yeah. And so what did he do in the military before he became a chaplain?
He was a transportation officer. So he went through ROTC and graduated and just did that for 4 years.
Okay. And then what was the process? Because I know from conversations we've had previously that he was active duty. You guys did DOD contracty stuff, or you did other stuff, and then he went back and became a chaplain. Can you explain that process?
Yeah, he had to. Well, first I would say that he got a civilian job in San Diego, and we happened to be in the same congregation with the chaplain at Miramar Marine Base in California, and he was actually related to that chaplain. But so we learned a lot about the chaplaincy from them, and that is where he told me that he wanted to get back into the Army as a chaplain. And when he said that, it sounded right to me. I was excited to get back into military life, I guess. But then we had to, at the time, look into the schooling options for our denomination, for Latter-day Saints, and, look into the Army, what the Army required, and also what the church required. So it took a few years. He ended up doing about 3 years of schooling until, fortunately, he was picked up for active duty. That doesn't always happen. Some people are picked up for reserve instead.
Yeah. So I know it's different for different denominations. What are the basic requirements from the Army or the military?
I want to say it's like possibly 70 hours of graduate study, like a seminary. Most seminaries are 3 years long. The program at Brigham Young University is 2 years, but they pack all of that into the 2 years. So it's pretty busy. But yeah, I think each denomination each endorser rather would have their own requirements.
Yeah, because there are non-Christian denomination chaplains as well. I do know that.
Yeah, and even within, like, if you look at Baptist denominations, there are many endorsers. So it's not one singular Southern Baptist or whatever. There are many different endorsing agencies, and so they would have their own requirements.
Yeah. So the Army requires a certain amount of graduate study time. Someone said that they have like ministry requirements, like you've had to.
Yes, you do also have to have some ministry experience. And so a lot of chaplains have been, have worked as a pastor in some kind of way, like as a youth pastor or something, at, any of their local churches for a while. For LDS people, they count, I think they count your mission service if you've done that. I'm not sure if they count any of your lay service time.
They actually do, because of the one family we know that's going through the process right now. But he was told that all of the callings, the lay ministry he's done, have counted. So,
okay, that's good.
yeah. Okay. So, in the whole process of doing this, what has been your favorite part about being a chaplain family?
I think it's been, for me, just learning about all of the other religions. I find that really fascinating. I came into this kind of maybe naive, but also open-minded and really interested in other religions and interested in the differences and the similarities. I came in feeling very different and very nervous going to any Bible studies, but it feels like, with all of our differences in the backgrounds and the faith backgrounds, that we talk about God in the same way, essentially. So I have enjoyed seeing that and seeing God's hand in the lives of so many other people of different faiths and backgrounds. So just rubbing shoulders with people with different beliefs, I think anybody who grows up in any religious culture, you often are kind of stuck in that culture because those are the people It's not like you're narrow-minded because you're not going out and searching for people, but it's just the culture that you grew up with. And so this has been really eye-opening and interesting to me, and such a blessing to be able to make friends from many different religions and to be able to talk openly about our beliefs and differences and similarities and funny quirks and stuff like that. Anything, that has been a lot of fun. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity if we were not a chaplain family.
Yeah, I have learned a lot from you about just even vocabulary, because our church has a very unique vocabulary that is different than a lot of other evangelical or Protestant Christian vocabulary. Catholics have their own vocabulary. And so sometimes as Christians, we can be talking about the same thing and we won't understand each other because we're using our own vocabulary. And even as you've been talking right now, I love that you will try to use the more universal vocabulary so that the most people will understand what you're getting to. And I learned a lot more about that from you. I grew up in a very multi-denominational neighborhood. I grew up with lots of friends from different faith backgrounds. And so I always at some level understood that concept. But you get into kind of a bubble where you hang out with people from your own religion for so long that sometimes you forget. And then when you moved into the area, I was like, oh, yeah, that's a better way of explaining that. Oh, yeah, I can use those words. And so it was really great for me to have that reminder.
Yeah, it's just one of those little cultural things, where it does make us feel very different until you realize we're talking about the same things, just using different terms for it sometimes. And sometimes we do have different definitions of something. And, different denominations think of the sacrament in totally different ways, right? It means something different to them. So that part is interesting too, is like learning what that is for them. And then that makes you reflect more on like, what is it really for us? Because you really do have to think about your belief and like, how would you explain it to somebody who does not have your background at all?
Yeah. So as a chaplain's family, what are some of the things you guys do? What's some things your husband does as a chaplain? What are some ways you as a family help him with what he does in the Army?
Well, most of the time is for a chaplain is spent at least for an Army chaplain, they are utilized a little differently than other branches. But so the Army chaplains are out there with their soldiers most of the time, so They do a lot of counseling. They are a staff officer, so they are counseling or advising the commanders. That's part of their job. But so they have to go to all the staff meetings, and they have to do stuff like that. They have to do Army stuff, right? They should not be getting out of PTs and rucks. They should be doing all of that stuff.
Commiserating.
So all of the, most of the ministry, I would say, is simply being out among the soldiers and counseling, when people come and talk to them or make appointments. Being a chaplain is not like only a Sunday job. And what you do on Sunday just depends on the base that you're at. Like my husband hadn't had to be involved in a service every Sunday, just because, like, for example, we were at Fort Bragg or Liberty, and there were like 100-something chaplains. Like they've got plenty of chaplains to preach and stuff. So he wasn't assigned anything there. And then he was at Arlington, and so that was a different experience because he wasn't part of a unit. So the Sunday, for us at least, has not been like a busy preaching schedule. Usually chaplains do rotate, like here they, take turns preaching on Sundays so that they're not like all really busy all the time. Or helping out in the service in some way,
So what did he do in Arlington?
He performed over 500 funerals.
Buddy.
Yes. It was definitely a unique ministry. He had people telling him, "Oh, you don't want to do that. That's, that sounds like a real downer, right?" But it was one of his favorite assignments. It's such a unique ministry, and you're with that family for a very short time, but a very important time. And so it's not a lot of counseling or anything, right? Because often those funerals don't happen until like 3 to 9 months after the person has passed. So many of the families have already grieved. They're not there for like counseling with you, but it's the chaplain's job and all of the soldiers there who are, taking part in the funeral to do all of those services right and well for this veteran, and to honor them in that way. It was just a really neat experience for my husband, and it was awesome for us to be able to go and see some of that and to learn more about it. Just learning more about the background and seeing everything. It was a really great experience.
Yeah, that actually covers the follow-up question I was going to ask is, did you guys ever go? And I've actually never been to Arlington. I do know that I have an ancestor buried there, and I want to go check out that grave sometime. But you see all those, like the funerals in the movie at Arlington, and you wonder if it's anything like that or what it really feels like. And that would be a really sacred, really awesome opportunity to honor these service members and to support their families.
Yeah, it is. It's a busy schedule. It's weird, right? Like to be doing like 12 funerals a week, but yeah, just what a beautiful opportunity to honor the service members.
Was he the only chaplain there, or were there other chaplains he was?
No, there are chaplains from from Army and Navy and Air Force, but fewer from Navy and Air Force. But there were like maybe 5 or 6 Army chaplains.
Okay, yeah. So he didn't have the load all by himself. That's good.
No, but that shows you how many funerals they're doing.
There's a lot of funerals if there's 12 a week. for him.
Yeah.
Because that includes vets as well as ones who, like, what's the qualifications to get buried in Arlington? I guess I've never really thought about that.
I think it changes a little. It has changed a bit. I'm not sure about all of the requirements, but
Okay, well, I'll look that up for my listeners. You don't have to
yeah.
worry about that. I'll do my own research instead of putting you
Yeah.
on the spot. Okay, so I know that when you were here where we're at, you guys worked with the Chaplains Association and did some of the other stuff. And how have your kids, like, how have they interacted? I mean, you're not them, but what have you seen with them? Do they get involved? Do a lot of chaplains' kids get involved, or is it a family thing, or is it a mom and dad thing?
I think it really just depends on your location, your season in life, your the opportunities there. On the one hand, you are, you're like a pastor's family, right? So people do maybe hold you up to higher standards, right? And they expect your kids to behave, and they expect you all to be good people and not, make dumb mistakes, stuff like that. So, I mean, we were advised to remember that, like you are kind of living in a fishbowl, and people do look to you in that way, for better or worse. And that's not always fair, that's not fair to put the pressure on the kids. But I've seen some of my friends get involved in, like, doing things like every Friday I had a friend who would bake something for her husband's unit or something like that. You don't have to do that. That's a big thing to do, stuff like that, and it really depends on, like, how old are your kids at the time, and what are you doing with them? Are people homeschooling, or are people in a lot of sports? So I feel like we've gotten past maybe the expectation that either an officer's wife or a pastor's wife needs to be doing something big, like in the church or whatever, right? On the one hand, I've been told by many senior spouses, like, do what you can do. You don't have to do it all. You don't, you have young kids or whatever, just do what you can do in your season. But then on the other hand, you do sometimes feel like, well, I should be doing something, should be involved in the community in some way. But it really just does depend on the location and who's there and what's going on. It is kind of nice in the military aspect that you can move and reinvent yourself, whereas when you are a pastor's wife for a civilian church, then you often get pigeonholed and you get stuck in one place.
Permanent magnifying glass, yay!
And you're like stuck in the same job or something, always doing children's church or Sunday school or whatever it is. And so at least in the military, it changes up because you move around and you just do what needs to be done at the time. So
honestly, that's my favorite part about being in the military, is every time we move, I can be like, okay, I don't like this part about myself. I'm working on that this time. And I've been able to, like, grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's something to throw out, is you grew up as a military kid.
Yes.
More or less. Yeah. And so this is what this is your whole life. That was your childhood, and now it's your adult life. And so
yeah,
I can see why you'd be comfortable with it, at least.
Right. And my husband as well. So we both grew up in the Air Force and active duty. And, the question, where are you from? That's the question you get all the time, right? And that's often been hard for me to answer. because you don't want to, you need a short answer. Nobody wants you to just go off on the long history. But when my husband was getting back into the Army, and I found myself like telling people about it, we were in Utah at the time going to school, or he was going to school, and like I was excited about this new chapter we were doing. But everybody else, like the civilians I was talking to, just were like looking at me funny. Like, why would I be excited to go back in the Army, and to live this life? But so I think I realized then that the military is my home community. Usually when I tell people I grew up in the military, they say, oh, so you were from all over. But that's not where I'm from. I don't feel like I'm from all over. I'm from a specific community. It's the military community. And that is where I do feel at home. I feel comfortable and at home on military bases and in this community. I know the lifestyle and the language, So I think that when he does retire, it will be hard for me, at least, in that I'll lose that community.
Yeah, I have a place I grew up. I was not a military child, but I feel a lot like you. I feel like I've been adopted into this military family, and I just flat out told my husband that when we get out permanently, we are always going to live next to a military installation because that's just how it's going to be. So, all right. Last question. What is advice you would give to anyone who's looking to becoming a chaplain, or their family's going to become a chaplain's family?
I would say to be open and curious about other religions, and to be welcoming and ecumenical, to want to work with other people from different faith backgrounds. We know chaplains who would be great pastors at a local church, but they do not want to accommodate people from other faith backgrounds. And that's what a chaplain does. A chaplain is like a pastor, but it is different. You are there to serve everyone. And that is hard to see sometimes. And I know people are, we disagree with other religions. Everybody does, right? We all have our own denominations for a reason. But we have so much in common. And even if it's just, if you're a Christian and Wiccans want a place to meet together, it is your job as a chaplain to find a place for them to meet, and not to shut them out of this spirituality because you don't agree with them. So the chaplains who can work well with other faith denominations, those are the best, and the families who are open to that as well, who are open to getting to know people of other faiths and learning from each other and working together to serve the military community, because that is specifically what a military chaplain does, is they're there for everybody in the community.
Yeah. And that is something I've really appreciated from, I think the best chaplains I've ever known are the ones that just love everyone, and they're not judgmental, and they're supportive. And that makes a huge difference when you need a safe place, someone to talk to that you can rely on. knowing that they're going to listen and they're going to care is huge. So
And
thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I was going to say, as far as for spouses and family members, just maybe change your expectations a little about what your Sundays look like. And, but don't put a whole lot of pressure on your kids to be perfect, because, it doesn't matter. They're kids, and they're gonna be loud in church, or they're gonna do something, it'll be fine. Like, don't put so much pressure on them that it will push them away, from church in general.
That's a good point. I really like that. Thank you for being willing to do this. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you just answering questions. So
again, I want to say thanks to my friend Bryn Omer for taking the opportunity to talk with me about what it's like to be a chaplain's family and why they made those decisions. I'm still working on other projects, and I can't wait to share those with all of you guys. As always, you're listening to Life of a Military Wife, and I am your host, Sam Wolf.